The morning sun cast long shadows across the manicured gardens of Windsor Castle as Catherine, Princess of Wales, stood before her dressing room mirror, carefully adjusting the Cambridge lover's knot tiara that had belonged to Princess Diana. The delicate diamonds caught the light, creating tiny rainbows that danced across the cream-colored walls. Today marked the 10th anniversary of her marriage to Prince William, and she had planned to wear this meaningful piece to the commemorative gala that evening. Catherine ran her fingers gently along the tiara's intricate design, remembering the first time William had presented it to her. His eyes had been filled with both love and sadness as he explained its significance. The tiara had been Diana's favorite, worn at countless royal engagements before her untimely death. When William offered it to Catherine, it felt like receiving a precious blessing from the mother-in-law she would never meet. The peaceful moment was interrupted by a sharp knock at the door. Catherine's lady-in-waiting, Sarah, entered with an expression of barely concealed concern. Behind her stood one of Queen Camilla's private secretaries, a stern woman named Margaret Thornberry who had served the royal household for over 2 decades. "Your Royal Highness," Margaret began, her voice carrying the weight of official business, "Her Majesty Queen Camilla requests your immediate presence in the blue drawing room. There is an urgent matter regarding tonight's arrangements that requires your attention." Catherine felt a flutter of unease in her stomach. She had spent weeks planning every detail of this anniversary celebration, working closely with the palace staff to ensure everything would be perfect. The guest list included close family members and dear friends who had supported her and William throughout their decade of marriage. What could possibly require such urgent discussion? Setting the tiara carefully back on its velvet cushion, Catherine followed the secretary through the castle's ornate corridors. Her heels clicked against the polished marble floors as they passed beneath portraits of long-dead monarchs who seemed to watch their progress with painted eyes. The blue drawing room was one of the castle's most formal spaces, typically reserved for important state meetings and diplomatic functions. Using it for what seemed like a simple discussion felt ominous. Camilla sat regally in a high-backed chair near the massive fireplace, her silver hair perfectly styled and her expression unreadable. She wore a navy blue dress suit that emphasized her authority, and her fingers were adorned with several significant royal rings. The room's atmosphere felt heavy with unspoken tension. "Catherine, dear, please sit," Camilla said, gesturing to the chair across from her. Her tone was polite but carried an underlying firmness that made Catherine's pulse quicken. "I'm afraid we have a delicate situation to address regarding tonight's festivities." Catherine settled into the offered chair, maintaining the composed demeanor that years of royal training had instilled in her. "Of course, Your Majesty. How may I be of assistance?" Camilla leaned forward slightly, her pale blue eyes fixed on Catherine's face. "It has come to my attention that you plan to wear the Cambridge lover's knot tiara this evening. While I understand its sentimental value to you and William, I must inform you of a complication that has arisen." Catherine's heart began to race, though she kept her expression neutral. The tiara wasn't just jewelry to her, it represented her connection to Diana's memory and William's trust in her to carry on that legacy. "What sort of complication, Your Majesty?" "Lady Pemberton's granddaughter, Sophia, will be attending tonight's gala as the guest of honor from the Children's Charity Foundation," Camilla explained, her hands folded precisely in her lap. "She is celebrating her engagement to the Duke of Marlborough's son, and her grandmother specifically requested that she be permitted to wear a significant royal tiara for the occasion. It would mean a great deal to the family and strengthen our relationship with their charitable organization." Catherine felt the color drain from her face. Lady Pemberton was one of the wealthiest philanthropists in Britain, and her family's support was crucial to several royal charities. However, the request felt like an intrusion on what should have been Catherine and William's special night. "I see," Catherine replied carefully. "And you believe the Cambridge lover's knot would be appropriate for Miss Sophia?" Camilla nodded, though Catherine detected a hint of something that might have been satisfaction in the Queen's expression. It would be a generous gesture that would not go unnoticed by the charitable community. "Your willingness to share such a meaningful piece would demonstrate the kind of selflessness that the monarchy represents." The words hit Catherine like a physical blow. She was being asked to give up Diana's tiara not for a state occasion or royal duty, but to please wealthy donors. The anniversary gala was supposed to be an intimate celebration of her marriage, not a political networking event. Your Majesty, Catherine began slowly, this tiara holds particular significance for William and myself. It was his gift to me, connecting us to his mother's memory. Perhaps one of the other royal tiaras would be more appropriate for Miss Sophia? Camilla's expression hardened almost imperceptibly. Catherine, I understand your attachment to the piece, but we must consider the greater good of the monarchy. The Cambridge lover's knot is one of our most photographed and recognized tiaras. Its appearance tonight would generate exactly the kind of positive publicity we need for the charity campaign. Catherine felt trapped between her personal feelings and her duty as a member of the royal family. She knew that refusing Camilla's request could be seen as selfish or uncooperative, potentially damaging her relationship with the Queen and affecting future royal duties. I would, of course, be happy to accommodate Her Majesty's wishes, Catherine said finally, the words feeling like ash in her mouth. However, I would like to discuss this matter with William before making any final arrangements. Camilla's smile was thin and cold. I'm afraid William is currently in meetings with the Prime Minister regarding the upcoming state visit. These discussions are expected to continue throughout the afternoon, leaving little time for personal consultations. Catherine realized that this timing was likely not coincidental. By waiting until William was unavailable, Camilla had effectively cornered her into making a decision without her husband's support. The Queen had played her hand expertly. Very well, Catherine replied, rising from her chair with as much dignity as she could muster. I will make the necessary arrangements for Miss Sophia to wear the tiara tonight. Camilla's satisfied smile confirmed Catherine's suspicions that this had been orchestrated. Thank you, Catherine. Your cooperation in this matter reflects well on your understanding of royal responsibilities. I'm sure Miss Sophia will be thrilled, and the photographs will be simply stunning. As Catherine left the blue drawing room, her mind raced with anger and frustration. She had been outmaneuvered by a woman who had decades more experience in royal politics and manipulation. The tiara that should have crowned her anniversary celebration would instead adorn the head of a stranger whose only qualification was her grandmother's wealth. Walking back to her chambers, Catherine passed several staff members who offered cheerful greetings about the evening's festivities. She managed to respond appropriately, but inside she felt hollow. How could she explain to William that she had agreed to give away his mother's tiara without consulting him? How could she enjoy their anniversary knowing that this meaningful symbol of their love and Diana's memory was being used as a political tool? In her dressing room, Catherine stared at the empty velvet cushion where the tiara had rested just an hour before. Already, one of Camilla's assistants had retrieved it for cleaning and preparation for its new wearer. The speed of the operation suggested that this had been planned well in advance. Catherine sank into her chair, overwhelmed by the realization that she had been systematically isolated and pressured into compliance. Camilla had known exactly when to make her move, ensuring that Catherine would be alone and vulnerable to persuasion. The Queen had presented the request as a matter of royal duty, making refusal seem petty and selfish. The sound of her phone buzzing brought Catherine back to the present moment. A text message from William appeared on the screen. Can't wait to see you in Mama's tiara tonight. You'll look beautiful, and I know she would be proud. Catherine's eyes filled with tears as she read his words. How could she tell him what had happened? How could she explain that his trust in her had been undermined by his stepmother's political maneuvering? The anniversary that was meant to celebrate their partnership had instead highlighted her powerlessness within the royal hierarchy. As afternoon turned toward evening, Catherine tried to focus on the positive aspects of the celebration. Many dear friends would be there to share in their joy, and the charitable cause was undeniably worthy. Perhaps she could find another way to honor Diana's memory during the evening's festivities. But, deep in her heart, Catherine knew that something fundamental had changed. Camilla had demonstrated that even Catherine's most personal moments could be commandeered for royal purposes. The tiara incident was not just about jewelry, it was about power, control, and the complex dynamics that governed life within the monarchy. Standing before her mirror once more, Catherine practiced the smile she would wear for the cameras that evening. She would be gracious and supportive, playing her role as the perfect princess. But she would not forget this lesson in royal politics, and she would be better prepared for future confrontations. The Cambridge lover's knot tiara would grace another woman's head that night, but Catherine's determination to protect her family's interests had been strengthened. She would find a way to ensure that William learned the truth about what had transpired, and, together they would decide how to respond to this calculated undermining of their special day. As the sun set over Windsor Castle, casting the ancient stones in shades of gold and amber, Catherine prepared herself for an evening that would test her resilience and diplomacy. The anniversary gala would proceed as planned, but it would mark the beginning of a new chapter in her relationship with Queen Camilla, one defined by caution, strategy, and the hard-won knowledge that in the game of royal politics, even family occasions could become battlegrounds. The grand ballroom of Windsor Castle blazed with the light of 1,000 candles, their warm glow reflecting off the gilded walls and crystal chandeliers that had witnessed centuries of royal celebrations. Guests in elegant evening were mingled beneath portraits of monarchs past, their conversations creating a gentle hum of anticipation for the anniversary festivities. Catherine stood at the entrance to the ballroom, wearing a stunning midnight blue gown that complemented her sapphire earrings, but her head remained conspicuously bare of the tiara that should have crowned the evening. William arrived just minutes before the formal announcement of their entrance, his military dress uniform immaculate and his expression bright with excitement. He moved through the corridor with the confident stride of a man looking forward to celebrating a decade of marriage with the woman he loved. When his eyes found Catherine, his smile faltered almost imperceptibly as he noticed the absence of his mother's tiara. "Darling, you look absolutely radiant," William said, taking her hands in his and pressing a gentle kiss to her cheek. His voice carried warmth, but Catherine could see the question in his eyes. "Where is the Cambridge lover's knot? I thought you had decided to wear it tonight." Catherine's heart clenched at the genuine confusion in his voice. She had rehearsed this moment throughout the afternoon, but actually explaining the situation to William proved more difficult than she had anticipated. The hurt in his eyes when she told him the truth would be unbearable. "There was a change of plans," Catherine replied carefully, aware that palace staff moved around them, making private conversation nearly impossible. "Your stepmother requested that I loan the tiara to one of tonight's honored guests. I will explain everything later." William's expression darkened, and Catherine saw his jaw tighten with barely controlled anger. His mother's tiara was not just another piece of royal jewelry to be distributed at Camilla's discretion. It represented his most personal connection to Diana's memory and his trust in Catherine to carry on that legacy. Before William could respond, the sound of approaching footsteps announced Queen Camilla's arrival. She swept into the corridor wearing a magnificent emerald green gown and the George IV state diadem, one of the crown jewel's most impressive pieces. Her entrance was perfectly timed to prevent any private discussion between William and Catherine about the tiara situation. "William, Catherine," Camilla said with a broad smile that did not quite reach her eyes, "you both look wonderful. This promises to be a memorable evening for everyone involved." William's training in diplomatic politeness warred with his obvious frustration. "Thank you, Camilla. I understand that Mother's tiara has been reassigned for tonight's festivities?" The tension in his voice was unmistakable, and Catherine saw Camilla's expression tighten almost imperceptibly before resuming its practiced warmth. "Yes, dear, it seemed like such a lovely gesture to honor Lady Pemberton's granddaughter on her engagement. I knew you would understand the importance of supporting our charitable relationships." "Without consulting me?" William asked, his voice dangerously quiet. Several nearby staff members suddenly found urgent business elsewhere, recognizing the signs of royal displeasure. Camilla's smile became more strained. The request came at very short notice, and Catherine was most understanding about the situation. "Sometimes we must make personal sacrifices for the good of the monarchy." Catherine watched this exchange with growing discomfort, realizing that she had become a pawn in a much larger power struggle between William and his stepmother. Camilla's decision to involve the tiara had not been random, it was a deliberate test of authority within the royal household. The sound of trumpets announcing the beginning of the evening's program prevented William from responding. Protocol demanded that they proceed with the celebration regardless of personal tensions, but Catherine could see that this issue would not be forgotten or forgiven easily. As they entered the ballroom, guests rose to their feet in respectful acknowledgement of the royal couple's arrival. Catherine managed her public smile, years of training allowing her to project warmth and happiness despite the turmoil churning beneath the surface. The applause was genuine and enthusiastic, filled with affection for the couple who had captured the public's heart through their decade of service and devotion. Lady Pemberton approached them almost immediately, her 70-year-old frame still elegant in ivory silk, with her granddaughter Sophia at her side. The young woman wore a cream-colored gown that complemented the Cambridge lover's knot tiara beautifully, though Catherine noted with some satisfaction that it did not suit Sophia's coloring as well as it did her own. "Your Royal Highnesses," Lady Pemberton gushed, "I cannot express how grateful our family is for this extraordinary honor. Sophia looks absolutely stunning, and the tiara is even more magnificent than the photographs suggested." Sophia, a pleasant-looking girl in her mid-20s, seemed genuinely overwhelmed by the attention. She kept touching the tiara nervously, as if afraid it might slip from her head. "Thank you so much, Your Royal Highness," she said to Catherine. "I promise to take the greatest care with it." Catherine's response was gracious, though she felt each word like a small betrayal of her own feelings. "You look lovely, Miss Sophia. I hope the tiara brings you joy on this special evening." William's contribution to the conversation was noticeably cooler, his responses polite but lacking the warmth that usually characterized his public interactions. Catherine could see him struggling to maintain diplomatic composure while watching his mother's tiara adorn the head of someone he had never met before tonight. As Lady Pemberton led her granddaughter away to show off the royal accessory to other guests, William leaned close to Catherine's ear. His voice was barely a whisper, but she could hear the steel beneath his controlled tone. "We need to discuss this situation immediately after tonight's festivities conclude," he said. "What happened here goes far beyond the tiara itself." Catherine nodded, understanding that William had grasped the larger implications of Camilla's maneuvering. This was about establishing dominance and testing boundaries within their family dynamic. By forcing Catherine to surrender Diana's tiara without William's consultation, Camilla had demonstrated her ability to override their personal wishes when she deemed it necessary for royal purposes. The evening proceeded with the formal dinner, speeches celebrating Catherine and William's 10 years of marriage, and presentations about the charitable work they had accomplished together. Throughout the festivities, Catherine found herself repeatedly noticing the Cambridge lover's knot tiara sparkling under the ballroom's lights on Sophia's head. Each glimpse served as a reminder of her powerlessness in the face of royal protocol and Camilla's calculated manipulation. During the dancing portion of the evening, Catherine and William moved together with the practiced grace that had made them such compelling public figures. To observers, they appeared perfectly content, sharing quiet conversations and gentle smiles as they waltzed beneath the chandeliers. But Catherine could feel the tension in William's posture and see the thoughtful calculation in his eyes as he considered how to respond to his stepmother's actions. "She waited until she knew I would be unavailable," William murmured as they danced. "This was orchestrated specifically to prevent me from defending our position." Catherine nodded, grateful that he understood the calculated nature of what had transpired. "I felt completely cornered." She framed it as a matter of royal duty and charitable necessity. "Mother's tiara is not a political tool," William replied firmly. "Camilla overstepped her authority, and there will be consequences for this decision." Across the ballroom, Catherine caught sight of Queen Camilla dancing with one of the distinguished guests, her expression serene and satisfied. The older woman seemed completely at ease with the evening's arrangements, showing no sign of concern about the tension she had created between William and Catherine. As the evening wore on, Catherine began to notice subtle changes in how some of the guests interacted with her. Several people who had previously approached her with easy familiarity now seemed more formal, as if they were uncertain about her position within the royal hierarchy. Camilla's public demonstration of authority over Catherine's choices had not gone unnoticed by the society observers present. The most painful moment came when Princess and William's aunt approached Catherine during a quiet moment near the terrace doors. The Princess Royal was known for her direct communication style and unwavering support for family loyalty. "I noticed you're not wearing the Cambridge lover's knot tonight," and said quietly, her sharp eyes taking in Catherine's careful expression. "That's Diana's favorite tiara, isn't it?" Catherine struggled to find an appropriate response that would not reveal the full extent of her humiliation. Her Majesty felt it would be meaningful to share the piece with one of tonight's honored guests. Princess Anne's expression hardened. "Share it? That tiara belongs to you now, Catherine. Diana wore it with pride, and William gave it to you as a symbol of trust and continuity. No one should be able to reassign it without your agreement." The validation from Princess Anne was both comforting and troubling. It confirmed Catherine's instinct that Camilla had overstepped appropriate boundaries, but it also made clear that this incident would have lasting implications for her standing within the royal family. As midnight approached and the formal festivities began to wind down, Catherine found herself both dreading and anticipating the private conversation she would have with William. They needed to address what had happened and develop strategies for preventing similar situations in the future. But she also feared that this incident might damage William's relationship with his father, King Charles, who would inevitably be drawn into any conflict between his son and his wife. The final dance of the evening was traditionally reserved for the anniversary couple alone. As Catherine and William took the floor while their guests watched from the sidelines, she tried to focus on the positive aspects of their celebration. Despite the tiara controversy, they had been surrounded by people who genuinely cared about their happiness and success. But, as the music ended and they prepared to bid farewell to their guests, Catherine caught one last glimpse of the Cambridge lovers' knot tiara disappearing through the ballroom doors on Sophia's head. Tomorrow, photographs of the young woman wearing Diana's tiara would appear in newspapers and magazines, forever linking the precious family heirloom to someone outside their immediate family circle. The evening that should have celebrated Catherine and William's enduring partnership had instead become a public demonstration of Camilla's power to override their personal preferences. As they smiled and waved goodbye to their departing guests, both Catherine and William knew that their relationship with the Queen had fundamentally changed. The battle for respect and autonomy within the royal household was far from over. The morning after the anniversary gala brought an unexpected deluge of media attention that transformed what should have been a celebration of marital devotion into a public relations nightmare. Catherine sat in the breakfast room of their private apartments, her morning tea growing cold as she scrolled through newspaper headlines and social media posts that dissected every detail of the previous evening's events. "Future Queen loans precious tiara to charity supporter," read one headline, accompanied by a large photograph of Sophia wearing the Cambridge lovers' knot tiara. Another publication had chosen a more provocative angle. "Where was Kate's crown? Princess gives up Diana's tiara for young socialite." The most damaging story appeared in a prominent gossip magazine with the headline, "Royal Hierarchy Revealed, Camilla's Power Move Leaves Kate Empty-Handed." William entered the breakfast room carrying his own collection of newspapers and wearing an expression of barely controlled fury. His normally immaculate appearance showed signs of a sleepless night, with dark circles under his eyes and tension lines around his mouth that Catherine had rarely seen before. "Have you seen the Times editorial?" William asked without preamble, setting the newspaper on the table with more force than necessary. "They're calling it a question of royal precedence and speculating about power dynamics within the family." Catherine looked up from her phone, where she had been reading increasingly uncomfortable commentary from royal watchers and social media users. "The Twitter reactions are even worse. People are saying I looked humiliated and that Camilla deliberately undermined me in public." William sat heavily in the chair across from her, running his hands through his hair in a gesture of frustration that reminded Catherine of their early dating years when he struggled with media intrusion into their private lives. "This is exactly what she wanted," he said grimly. "Camilla knew that forcing you to give up the tiara would generate publicity, but she miscalculated how the public would interpret the gesture." The irony was not lost on either of them. Queen Camilla had intended to demonstrate her authority and generate positive coverage for the charitable cause, but the media narrative had focused instead on what appeared to be a deliberate humiliation of the popular Princess of Wales. Royal commentators were openly questioning whether Catherine's position within the family hierarchy was being systematically undermined. Their private discussion was interrupted by the arrival of Sir Clive Alderton, King Charles's private secretary, whose presence in their apartments so early in the morning indicated the seriousness of the situation. The distinguished man in his 60s carried himself with the gravity of someone delivering unwelcome news. "Your Royal Highnesses," Sir Clive began formally, "His Majesty requests your presence for a family meeting in his study within the hour. Her Majesty Queen Camilla will also be in attendance." William's expression darkened further. "I assume this concerns last night's events and the subsequent media coverage?" Sir Clive nodded carefully. "The Palace Press Office has been fielding inquiries since 5 o'clock this morning. The volume and nature of the questions suggest that this story has gained significant traction in both traditional media and social networks. After the private secretary departed, Catherine and William sat in uncomfortable silence, each contemplating the difficult conversation that awaited them. Catherine had hoped that they would have time to develop their own strategy for addressing the Tiara incident before being forced into a family confrontation. Instead, they were being summoned to defend their position while emotions were still raw and before they had fully processed what had transpired. "Whatever happens in that meeting," William said finally, "I want you to know that I support you completely." Camilla's actions were inappropriate and manipulative, regardless of how she attempts to justify them. Catherine felt a surge of gratitude for her husband's unwavering loyalty. The knowledge that they would face this challenge as a united front gave her strength for the confrontation ahead. "Thank you," she replied simply. "I was so afraid you would blame me for not standing up to her more forcefully." William reached across the table to take her hand. "You were ambushed by someone with decades more experience in royal politics. The fault lies entirely with Camilla, not with you." 30 minutes later, Catherine and William made their way through the castle's corridors to King Charles's private study, a room lined with leather-bound books and family photographs that normally felt welcoming but, today seemed ominous. Charles sat behind his antique desk, his expression grave, while Camilla occupied one of the chairs facing him. Her posture was defensive, suggesting that she was already aware of the negative public reaction to her orchestrated Tiara exchange. "Please, sit down," Charles said without his usual warmth. The strain of mediating between his wife and his son was evident in his tired expression. "We have a significant situation to address." William remained standing, his military bearing emphasizing his determination not to be intimidated. "Father, I believe we need to discuss the circumstances under which my wife was pressured into surrendering my mother's tiara last evening." Camilla interjected before Charles could respond. "Pressured is rather a strong word, William." Catherine agreed to the arrangement willingly when I explained the charitable implications. "After you deliberately waited until I was unavailable for consultation," William replied coldly. "And after you framed the request in a way that made refusal seem petty and uncooperative." Charles raised his hand to prevent the argument from escalating further. "The immediate concern is not who said what to whom, but how we manage the public perception of this incident. The media coverage has been uniformly negative, and palace communications staff are struggling to develop an appropriate response." Catherine had remained silent during this exchange, but she recognized that her perspective was crucial to finding a resolution. "Your Majesty," she said, addressing Charles directly, "I want to emphasize that my concern is not about the tiara itself, but about the process by which the decision was made. If royal jewelry is to be shared with guests, surely there should be some consultation with the family members who have personal connections to these pieces." Camilla's expression hardened. "Catherine, I understand your sentimental attachment, but we cannot allow personal feelings to override institutional needs. The monarchy requires flexibility in how we deploy our resources, including historic jewelry." William stepped closer to his stepmother, his voice dangerously quiet. "That tiara is not an institutional resource to be deployed at your discretion. It was my mother's personal favorite, and I gave it to Catherine as a symbol of trust and continuity. Your decision to reassign it without consultation was both inappropriate and hurtful." The room fell silent as the implications of William's words sank in. Charles looked increasingly uncomfortable with the family conflict unfolding in his presence. As the reigning monarch, he needed to maintain neutrality, but, as a father and husband, he was caught between competing loyalties. "Perhaps," Charles suggested carefully, "we should establish clearer protocols for future situations involving personal jewelry loans. This would prevent similar misunderstandings while ensuring that charitable relationships are properly maintained." Camilla's response revealed her frustration with the pushback she was receiving. "Charles, we cannot allow every decision to be scrutinized and debated endlessly. Sometimes leadership requires making difficult choices quickly." Catherine recognized this as an opportunity to assert her position more firmly. "Your Majesty, I would respectfully suggest that decisions involving jewelry with deep personal significance should include consultation with the relevant family members. This is not about vetoing charitable gestures, but about ensuring that such gestures are made thoughtfully and with full family support." The discussion continued for nearly 2 hours, with each participant defending their perspective while trying to find common ground. Charles attempted to mediate between his wife's institutional concerns and his son's personal grievances, while Catherine fought to establish principles that would protect her family's interests in future situations. Finally, they reached a tentative agreement. Charles would announce new protocols for royal jewelry loans that required consultation with family members who had personal connections to specific pieces. Camilla would issue a statement praising Catherine's generosity while acknowledging that future arrangements would involve more comprehensive family discussions. But, as they left the meeting, Catherine knew that the fundamental issues had not been resolved. The power struggle between Camilla's institutional authority and William's family loyalties would continue to create tension within the royal household. The Tiara incident had merely exposed deeper fault lines that would require ongoing navigation. That afternoon brought an unexpected development when Lady Pemberton called Catherine directly to express her concerns about the negative publicity surrounding her granddaughter's appearance at the gala. The elderly philanthropist was horrified to learn that Sophia's wearing of the tiara had become a source of family conflict. "Your Royal Highness," Lady Pemberton said during their phone conversation, "I had no idea that wearing the tiara would create such difficulties. Sophia is devastated to think that she might have been used as a pawn in some sort of royal disagreement." Catherine reassured the concerned grandmother that no blame attached to her or Sophia, while privately marveling at how Camilla's manipulation had hurt innocent people beyond the immediate family circle. The collateral damage from the Queen's power play was expanding far beyond what she had likely anticipated. Evening brought a flood of messages from friends and family members who had seen the news coverage and wanted to offer support. Catherine's brother James called to express his outrage at what he called calculated humiliation, while several of her closest friends sent texts questioning whether she was truly happy in her royal role. Most significantly, a message arrived from Princess Anne, who had witnessed the previous evening's events firsthand. The Princess Royal's note was characteristically direct: Diana would be appalled by what happened to her tiara. Some traditions should be protected from political maneuvering. As Catherine prepared for bed that night, she reflected on how dramatically the family dynamics had shifted in just 24 hours. The anniversary celebration that should have strengthened her marriage had instead become a catalyst for larger questions about power, respect, and autonomy within the royal household. William joined her in their bedroom, carrying a small velvet box that she immediately recognized. Inside lay a pair of diamond earrings that had belonged to Princess Diana, pieces that William had kept in his private collection since his mother's death. "These are yours now," William said simply. "No one can take them away or loan them out without your permission. They represent my commitment to protecting what matters to both of us." Catherine's eyes filled with tears as she understood the deeper meaning of his gesture. The earrings were beautiful, but, more importantly, they represented William's determination to shield their marriage from further interference. The battle over the tiara had ended, but the war for autonomy within the royal family was just beginning. 3 weeks after the anniversary gala, the repercussions from the tiara incident continued to ripple through the royal household and beyond. Catherine stood in her private office at Kensington Palace, reviewing correspondence from the public that had poured in following the extensive media coverage of what newspapers had dubbed Tiaragate. The letters revealed a level of public investment in her well-being that both touched and concerned her. "Your Royal Highness," wrote one correspondent from Manchester, "I have followed your work for years and was heartbroken to see how you were treated at your anniversary celebration. Please know that ordinary people recognize genuine kindness and won't forget what happened." Another letter, from a grandmother in Scotland, was more direct: "That woman has no right to take away something that belonged to Princess Diana. You show more grace than she deserves." The public reaction had been overwhelmingly supportive of Catherine, with social media campaigns using hashtags like #JusticeForKate and #DianaStiara generating millions of interactions. Public opinion polls showed a significant drop in Queen Camilla's approval ratings, while Catherine's popularity had actually increased in response to what many perceived as her dignified handling of an impossible situation. William entered the office carrying a folder of documents that Catherine recognized as intelligence briefings from the palace security team. His expression was grim, suggesting that the contents were troubling. "The security assessment of public sentiment is concerning," William said without preamble. "There have been several protests outside Buckingham Palace with people carrying signs about the tiara incident. The police are worried that Camilla's public appearances might attract hostile demonstrations." Catherine set down the letter she had been reading and focused her attention on her husband. The realization that their family conflict had escalated into public unrest was deeply disturbing. Surely people understand that this was a private disagreement that got out of hand? William shook his head. The public sees this as symbolic of larger issues within the monarchy. Royal commentators are calling it a watershed moment that reveals fundamental problems with how the institution operates. The irony was not lost on either of them. Queen Camilla's attempt to demonstrate her authority and generate positive publicity had instead created the most serious public relations crisis the monarchy had faced in years. The incident had struck a nerve with the public, particularly women who identified with Catherine's position and saw parallels in their own experiences with family power dynamics. Their discussion was interrupted by the arrival of Catherine's private secretary, Amanda Richards, who carried news of an unexpected development. The professional woman in her 40s looked unusually flustered, suggesting that whatever she had to report was significant. "Your Royal Highness," Amanda began, addressing Catherine directly, "I've just received a call from Lady Pemberton. She wishes to meet with you privately to discuss returning the Cambridge lovers not Tiara and making a public statement about the events at the anniversary gala." Catherine and William exchanged glances of surprise. Lady Pemberton's intervention had not been anticipated, but it suggested that the negative publicity was affecting even the charitable relationships that Camilla had claimed to be protecting. Did she explain her reasoning? Catherine asked, though she suspected she could guess the elderly philanthropist's motivations. Amanda consulted her notes. Lady Pemberton expressed concern that her family's involvement had been used to create conflict within the royal family. She wants to distance herself from what she called an inappropriate political maneuver and ensure that her granddaughter is not remembered as part of a royal scandal. William's expression brightened for the first time in weeks. This could provide an opportunity to resolve the immediate crisis while establishing better boundaries for future situations. Catherine agreed, but she also recognized the delicate nature of managing Lady Pemberton's offer. The elderly woman's public support could help repair the damage from the Tiara incident, but it needed to be handled in a way that did not further humiliate Queen Camilla or create additional family conflict. The meeting with Lady Pemberton took place 2 days later in the private sitting room of Catherine's Kensington Palace apartments. The elderly philanthropist arrived wearing an elegant black suit that emphasized the seriousness of her mission. She was accompanied by her granddaughter Sophia, whose obvious distress at being caught in the middle of a royal controversy was evident from the moment she entered the room. "Your Royal Highness," Lady Pemberton began without preliminary pleasantries, "I owe you an apology for my family's unwitting participation in what appears to have been a calculated attempt to undermine your position." Catherine was struck by the directness of the older woman's statement. Lady Pemberton's understanding of the situation was far more sophisticated than Camilla had apparently anticipated when she orchestrated the tiara exchange. "Please don't feel that any apology is necessary," Catherine replied graciously. "You and Sophia were simply responding to what seemed like a generous royal gesture." Sophia finally spoke, her voice trembling with emotion. "I had no idea that wearing the tiara would cause such problems. I've been getting terrible messages on social media from people who think I was part of some sort of plot against you." The young woman's genuine distress touched Catherine's heart. Sophia had become collateral damage in a power struggle that she had never understood or consented to join. The fact that she was now facing public hostility for her innocent participation made Catherine even angrier at Camilla's manipulation. Lady Pemberton reached into her handbag and withdrew a small velvet box containing the Cambridge lovers not tiara. "I want to return this immediately and issue a public statement clarifying that my family had no knowledge of any family tensions surrounding the piece." Catherine accepted the box with mixed emotions. Having the tiara back would restore an important symbol of her connection to Diana's memory, but she knew that this gesture alone would not resolve the larger issues that the incident had revealed. "Lady Pemberton," Catherine said carefully, "I appreciate your concern, but I want to ensure that returning the tiara doesn't damage your relationship with other members of the royal family." The elderly woman's expression hardened. "Your Royal Highness, I have been supporting royal charities for over 40 years. I understand the difference between genuine royal service and political manipulation. What happened at your anniversary celebration was unacceptable, and I will not allow my family to be associated with it." William, who had been listening quietly, leaned forward in his chair. We are grateful for your support, but we want to handle this situation in a way that preserves important charitable relationships. Lady Pemberton smiled for the first time since entering the room. Prince William, your concern for others even in the midst of personal hurt speaks well of your character. However, some principles are more important than diplomatic convenience. The conversation continued for another hour as they discussed the best way to manage Lady Pemberton's public statement and the return of the tiara. They agreed that the elderly philanthropist would emphasize her family's unwitting involvement while praising Catherine's grace in handling a difficult situation. The statement would focus on moving forward positively rather than dwelling on past grievances. That evening brought an unexpected summons to another family meeting, this time at Buckingham Palace. King Charles's private secretary had called with only 2 hours' notice, suggesting that Queen Camilla was responding to intelligence about Lady Pemberton's planned statement. The meeting took place in the same study where they had gathered 3 weeks earlier, but the atmosphere was markedly different. Charles appeared exhausted by the ongoing family tension, while Camilla's confident demeanor had been replaced by obvious anxiety about the deteriorating situation. I understand that Lady Pemberton plans to make some sort of public statement, Camilla began without preliminary greetings. I hope we can convince her that further publicity would not serve anyone's interests. William's response was immediate and firm. Actually, Lady Pemberton's statement might help resolve the public relations crisis that this incident has created. Charles looked up sharply from the papers he had been reviewing. What sort of statement is she planning to make? Catherine explained Lady Pemberton's desire to return the tiara and clarify her family's unwitting participation in what had become a royal controversy. She emphasized the elderly woman's genuine concern about being used as a political pawn and her desire to protect her granddaughter from further negative attention. Camilla's reaction revealed the depth of her concern about the situation. Surely we can find a way to manage this privately without generating additional media coverage? William stood up from his chair, his posture conveying barely controlled frustration. Camilla, this crisis exists because of your decision to manipulate a private family celebration for political purposes. Lady Pemberton's statement offers an opportunity to begin repairing the damage. The argument that followed was more heated than their previous family discussion, with Charles struggling to mediate between his wife's defensive justifications and his son's demands for accountability. Catherine found herself caught between wanting to support William's position and recognizing the need to preserve family relationships for the sake of the monarchy's stability. Finally, Charles imposed a resolution that satisfied no one completely but provided a framework for moving forward. Camilla would issue her own statement acknowledging that the tiara arrangement had been handled poorly and expressing regret for any family tensions it had created. Lady Pemberton would be free to make her statement, but it would be coordinated with palace communications to ensure consistency in messaging. The public statements were released simultaneously the following Monday morning. Lady Pemberton's message was clear and dignified, emphasizing her family's respect for royal privacy while making it evident that they had been unwitting participants in a family disagreement. Camilla's statement was more carefully worded, acknowledging miscommunication about the tiara arrangement while stopping short of accepting full responsibility. The media reaction was swift and largely positive for Catherine and William. Royal commentators praised Lady Pemberton's integrity and interpreted Camilla's statement as an admission of poor judgment. Public opinion polls showed continued support for Catherine, while calls for greater transparency in royal decision-making grew louder. More importantly for Catherine, the return of the Cambridge lover's knot tiara restored something precious that had been taken from her. When she held the delicate piece again, she felt reconnected to Diana's memory and to the trust that William had placed in her when he first presented it years earlier. That evening, as Catherine and William sat together in their private sitting room, they reflected on how profoundly the tiara incident had changed their understanding of family dynamics and public expectations. The crisis had been painful, but it had also strengthened their partnership and clarified their priorities. Do you think this will change how Camilla approaches these situations in the future? Catherine asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. William considered the question carefully. I think she underestimated both your resilience and the public's investment in your well-being. She won't make the same mistake again, but there will be other challenges. Catherine nodded, understanding that the tiara incident had been just one battle in a longer campaign for respect and autonomy within the royal household. But she also knew that she and William had emerged from this crisis stronger and more united than before. 6 months later, Catherine wore the Cambridge Lovers' Knot tiara to a state banquet honoring visiting dignitaries. The photographs from that evening showed her radiant and confident, the tiara perfectly complementing her elegant gown and warm smile. No one looking at those images would have guessed the struggle that had preceded this moment of triumph. The tiara incident had taught Catherine valuable lessons about royal politics, family dynamics, and the power of public opinion. Most importantly, it had shown her that with William's support and her own determination, she could navigate even the most challenging situations while maintaining her dignity and protecting what mattered most to her family. The Cambridge Lovers' Knot tiara had returned home, and, with it, Catherine had reclaimed not just a piece of jewelry, but her rightful place as the future queen, respected and protected by both her husband and the people she served.